Woo! Hey! You are looking live at the Bruce Chef Show. Woo! Everybody go up and blow. Woo! Back home. Have on the street. What's up, Michael? How are you?
I'm doing great, Jack. I'm doing great. You're a world traveler again. You were grounded for a year or two, and
Yes.
How'd it feel? How'd it feel to get back on the road, airborne?
First time out. Look, I got we were able to put the music in the show. The StreamYard's got all these new things. So I'm trying to mix and match and add brands. That's why we're a little late today getting in. We're trying to upload a new video and so just trying to make all the functionalities. But yep, I was on the road. I was at the NSA show this past weekend. It was amazing in Nashville. Nashville is crazy right now. If you've spent time there, Skyline 3 or 4 years ago, 30 cranes in Nashville. Yeah. If you moved to Nashville for like a small southern town feel, forget it. There's more traffic there than there is in LA and Miami. Crazy. But the NSA show, which was the National Speakers Association, was amazing. Ton of great folks, ton of great speakers. Great weekend. Learned a lot trying to mold the 180 way and get the message out. And so if you look in the upper right-hand corner, we got a new, where is it, or here? Got a new logo up here. So working on our branding. It's coming. The 180 way life intervention. So as part of that, that's really today's topic as we jump into it. Before we do that, Mike, anything exciting happen on your end? Oh, I know you got to see your granddaughter and your kids are in town, right? All good?
Oh yeah, we had a family reunion Friday afternoon. They came in town for a wedding. We didn't get to see them on Saturday, but on Friday we went to the splash pad. I think splash pads are something that everybody has in every town, but just water coming up, shooting up out of the ground, little squirts running through it, and you're running after your little squirts. But it was a ton of fun. And it was definitely it was worthy of a giant Advil prescription strength, not just over the counter, that the old man was feeling the back right away on that one. Oh. But ton of fun. Love those kids and love trying to be an influence in their lives, right? It just increases what we're trying to do here is just, that we just been down the road so many times. And if we can help our grandkids, our kids, or somebody else's kids, just skip a couple potholes along the way, it sure would be rewarding for us.
Amen. That's really the focus of what we're trying to get done. And in that vein, if you saw any of the prelude for the show, we're stepping into it today, right? So you hear this thing all the time, especially if you're around your elders. Don't talk about, money, religion, politics, religion, money, politics. These are the 3 curse words of life, and you should not endeavor in any social setting take on any of these topics. And so it's just so interesting as we talk about the 180 way, like that's just so not true. It is true if you're like staying in the safe zone of life. Get that? I'm not, this is not today, just to be really direct, this is not like at every endeavor to bring up these things. But listen, if you do not jump into these 3 topics throughout your life, you are going to struggle. I mean, the money one's easy, right? People are like, you're going to talk about money, people that have money can manage money, blah, blah, blah. And in what environment you can do that. And then politics, which affects all of us. We're all more sensitive, more aware of that over the last couple of years. And then obviously religion, faith, again, can be one of those things people are like, well, you don't want to get into that topic. But the reality is, if we're super honest, those 3 topics, there's nothing that affects us more really probably than those 3 topics. Maybe our personal health. So if you want to add that in there, right? We've all been around people who you go somewhere, they're like, they tell you all their ailments. You're like, I got it. You have ailments. But you're outside of your personal health or the health of your loved ones. Those 3 topics, there's probably not 3 topics that have a bigger impact on your life, right?
It's going on around us. I remember my grandparents' house. There are parts of my family. I was adopted, so it was always interesting around my family because there was definitely a blood thing, and then there was adopted Mikey. And he wasn't in the mix, but one day a year, Christmas at Grandma's house, and Grandma had a rule, man. You did not talk about anything like sports. If you were a Dolphin fan, you could talk about sports. If you weren't a Dolphin fan, you couldn't talk about sports. You couldn't talk about religion. You couldn't talk about politics. Just everybody kind of sat around, drank some drinks, and it was so sad because, like you said, Jack, if you don't talk about those three things, you'll never know anybody. You'll never know what's important to them. You never know what they think about. You'll just never really know them. And it's so sad because everybody comments on our society now that we don't communicate anymore. We stay so superficial. Hey, how are you? Great. How are you? Great too. Thanks for asking. See you later. Don't really care. I want to go. But if we really want to care and engage with other people, we've got to talk about these things, and we've got to be willing to hear points of view that don't match.
Right. That's where the rubber hits the road. I got a quick time out. Forgot to do this as we start the show. I just remind folks, we are sponsored by i.help. And so goodness gracious, we're so blessed. I got all discombobulated with the new features and functions in live. So sorry about that. But if the i.help folks are watching, sorry. But listen, highly encourage you to go get your i.help account. If you're unaware, go look at the i.help website. Amazing. It takes everything you do online and aggregates it into one spot. And I mean everything. All of your website, your company website, podcast, anything you do online, if you have a YouTube channel, anything you do, and then all your other connected stuff, how people connect with you, which is a webcast, or if you want them to see your online calendar, if you take electronic payments or sharing files, all of that happens in one spot for just $5 a month. Love i.help. Appreciate them sponsoring the show. It's amazing. So encourage you to go get your i.help account. For the rest of your life, you can just say, oh, all my stuff is just at i.help/Jack, or you can literally send them your own personal URL, by the way. So they'll match to any URL. You can say, hey, all my online content is at this URL, Jack Siney's stuff, or Mike Denker's stuff, or whatever your name is stuff. So
it's funny, Jack, that Angel is in in our master bedroom closet. She's been there for a while, and she's in there decluttering our world. Oh, wow. And look, I forgot we even had this. Does this still fit you? Just decluttering our physical world. And i.help declutters our virtual life. I mean, it just takes the clutter right out of it, and they do it for you. It's like somebody, like Angel my wife hiring someone to come and declutter our closet for us. i.help does that in our virtual world.
Listen, for $5, I think you get a couple months free, and then it's $5. Like, stop being cheap. Go get your i.help account. It is literally one of those things that everyone will use in the next 10 years, whether it's i.help or I'm sure a forthcoming competitor. But you are going to have a online aggregation tool. So just encourage you to go get that now. So you have all social media is about your hashtag, or you never want to put the Mike Denker, right? People are like, just add something in front of it, but you really want to have your name or whatever it is. So go spend $5. It's totally worth it. Go drink your coffee and get i.help. Good. So as Mike was going through that, right, this whole religion, money, politics, so funny because it is literally when you think about it, it's like when you said, hey, people in the old days, it was at family functions, or hey, make sure let's all stay. No, let's not rock the boat. But now we all know that social media has created this enormous over communication. I'm bored. I'm going to make 19 TikTok videos. Quick sidebar. Don't do that. Right. But all this over communication. And it's funny at the NSA conference, a lot of speakers, you talk about changing the world, travel, millions of different places, all these thousands of people there. There was a lot of talk about this, about everything we've gone through the last couple of years. And like, hey, what's happening in the communication of our society? Because as speakers, they want to go on stage, all that move virtual, right? And then the cross flow of social media, you know what I mean? Like, hey, what's happening with social media? And with the sentiment always being, hey, would you say that to someone's face? You know what I mean? That's really the thing. Like, would you really, anything you're about to type, like just something to always think about, like, you're typing it out. We always have this thing, well, Susan or Bob, they're in Wisconsin, they're in California, I don't even know them, right? And it's like, oh, I'll jump into their stuff. And it's like, if you were going to walk out your front door and bump into them, would you type the exact same message? One. And then two, with the same tonality or the same, aggressiveness potentially, would you do that? And I think that's really a big thing for folks to think about. Hey, on social media, when you start talking about religion, money, politics, would you say the same things, particularly politically? People get very dug in, right? And so just encourage you to just think about, if you were going to go out and see them, would you say it? Because these topics should be talked about. You should find a safe way. But over the last couple of years, it seems like we lost our ability to peacefully disagree it has to get so venomous. It's like, you either agree with me or you're dead to me. And so that part really stinks in today's kind of, dialogue about important topics.
A friend of mine just had a, big stuff happen in the courts these days, and the stuff happening in the courts, people are doing, coming out polarized, right? It's a very polarizing events that their opinions are just so polarized. And my friend actually tried to put up something friendly, but then somebody responded back polarizing. Their response was polarizing. And then what's really interesting, the other person said to them, I've known you for 40 years. I don't want anything to hurt our relationship.
Amen.
And my friend was the person that's used to being that olive brancher, right? They're good at that. That's something but all of a sudden that's a great verb, isn't it? They got olive branched.
Olive branched.
Right? They got olive branched. And it was so great that they found common ground. They didn't even know they've known each other 40 years. They found common ground when they went looking for it on the other side of the polarization. Past that, let's find common ground. They found things they didn't even know about each other. They're tighter today, 1 week later from potential, I'll never talk to you again, unfriend socially, out, to let me hear you.
Amen.
Let me hear you.
Yeah. That's what I put. Look, that's social media. I put this thing. We talked. Mike and I talk regularly, obviously, and then but the whole Stephen Covey, like,
yes,
like this is so as we dive into these topics a little bit, in full disclosure, we're not asking you to go out and stir the pot. This is not like, oh, put on your armor, you're gonna get murdered. But if you're able to literally or get verbally murdered or start an altercation or whatever that is, but this thing, like, do you enter this conversation trying to change someone else's mind, or are you entering the conversation like looking to learn something? And I'll just say that's a little nuance, but it is a game changer, because Mike says this all the time. We had a friend, what's the quote, Mike? You're not changing someone's worldview in 15 minutes.
You're not going to deconstruct a person's worldview over a cup of coffee.
Yeah, or a post. You're not.
Or definitely a post, right?
You're like, oh, I just saw that. Let me just talk out this comment. Maybe they didn't know. Yeah. And it's like, that's not happening. But if we all showed up without thinking we were a know-it-all and like trying to convince the other person, if we all showed up and like just asked some questions to understand, perhaps we would create the world and the social media environment and the real world environment we want day to day, and maybe have less riots if we tried to approach a situation trying to understand. But I think that sadly, it's actually opposite, right? Covey had this right. It's really, we're like, we want you to understand me, right? And that's so, it is tearing at the fabric of our society.
Well, I think a lot of us, we realize that we have some parts of our worldview are pretty tight and they make a lot of sense, and we're informed, and we make these intelligent, decisions about how we're going to believe things. Yeah. But there's a lot of our worldview that is a house of cards. Like, we're delving into things that we don't know. They're way more complex. We're trying to take it into a little sound. We're judging something on a sound bite that in Congress, it's a document that's this thick, right? They're reading through 900 pages. And they say to the simple Americans, you need a soundbite to really understand what 900 pages is saying. And it's just so silly and that's why we get defensive, though. Because don't you dare try to come unravel my worldview that I put together, right?
But even more than that. So I was at NSA this weekend, and one of the ladies' speech, her whole speech, it was one of those, she gets done, you're like, oh, that's when it touches your fabric of your foundation. She's like, hey, she has this picture. She's doing this retreat. They're out in the middle of Montana, ... She's like, she's got a big group picture. They're doing this, all this stuff. And she's like, everything's perfect. Love it. God's, I'm aligned. It's all great. She goes, I look over and I see something slithering on the ground coming at me. So she's literally in an instant, everything changed. She's like, snake, poisonous snake coming at me. I'm going to die, blah, blah, blah. She goes through this whole thing about the snake. Well, come to find out, the end of her story, ruin the ending. It was not a snake. It was a piece of rope. It looked like a snake. And she's like, how quickly our mind attaches so much. And she's like, for literally 5 minutes, everything in me was turned upside down. She told another story about she's going down a highway, and everything was fine. Somebody cut her off. And not only did someone cut her off, they had a bumper sticker of the opposite political belief. So now they just weren't, somebody cutting her off. They were now evil. You know what I mean? We all have that thing like, oh, that's the opposite party or wherever you believe. And then now
From jerk to evil jerk.
it's all in our head. So much of what you just said, so much of it is self-induced in our head. We are creating the negativity, not really the life events. It's in our head. Like you said, we add to it. Something could happen or we misinterpret it and we are making it up in our head, like kind of what you're saying, right?
Well, it's a coloring, right? Like Gladwell calls it thin slicing. His book was Blink, that we're literally capturing millions of inputs and our brains are putting it all into a story. And that's why 3 people watching the same event from almost the same angle, they come up with 3 different stories because our entire lives are baked into our filters. Yeah. And we have to appreciate that. Like, listen, you see it a little differently than I do, or a lot differently based upon the life you've lived versus the life I've lived. And how interesting it would be to understand how they came to that point. Like, how did you get there? Because one of the things, Jack, that you said, like, that's somebody's memoir unfolding with someone. Like, some memoirs are really, really interesting, but we think that someone out there's memoir is going to say in chapter 3, 4th paragraph, I saw a tweet from Mike Denker, and that tweet changed everything, right? I had a worldview, and then all of a sudden I read Mike Denker's tweet, and that changed my worldview in a moment. And it's just not happening. We are complex. We are wonderfully made. We are wonderfully created. And we were created with great plans, like plans for us to do things that are bigger, actually bigger than what we think we are sometimes. But we, in these plans, we need the folks around us, right? Yeah. To do great, mighty, big things together, we've got to know the people around us. We've got to figure out. Will Rogers used to say, right? I never met somebody I didn't like. And he meant it because he tried his best to get to know the person he got to meet, and I think that's so important for us.
Mike's 1970s references because the concept.
Will Rogers' 1940s reference.
Yeah. So listen, this thing of religion, money, politics, money, religion, whatever you want to do it, money, religion, politics, however you mix them up. Listen, just want to encourage us, you, all of us, to like dig in and not avoid. These are the most important topics. The money topic. There are people that have the money. Like it's like when you join a company, people are like, I don't know how to make a success here. Yeah, that's so easy. Find the top 5 people, go spend a day with all of them. Like almost everything in the franchise world, everything's already been done. People just are not willing to put in the effort to replicate it. Like rarely do you need to people are so like, I gotta go figure it out. Rarely do you have to go across the desert and create a new widget. That some do, like Elon Musk, some people are doing that. But for most of us, it's already been done. And are we ready to walk the path? And in the business world, listen, the money, how to be successful in your company, in your personal life, wherever you are, in whatever state, whatever industry, it's already been done. And the question is, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? You want to put in the time and effort to go follow somebody, learn some things. And again, approach it like, hey, I want to understand before being understood. And a lot of us type A's don't love that. We're like, I already got all this. And so in the business world, just want to encourage you, almost all the answers are out there. You don't have to recreate the wheel, right? And in the politics world, listen, it's dicey. Like we all know we're super polarized, and I'll just, for the record, just say both extremes are wrong. Let's just say that. Is that a fair? Like the left is too far left and the right is too far left. And most of America is in the middle. And we really don't have a middle of the road candidate. And so how do we get there? Again, I think we get back there through this, right? Whatever the topic is, I believe most of America agrees, hey, this is really what we want. But we let the politicians, we let the media, we let social media, we let angry friends just take us down some polarized road that we do not need to be on. And so to me, the money and the politics piece is actually the easiest of these two. So before we jump into the faith thing, Mike, anything you wanted to add to those?
Well, I'll just say that I just remember that when I was early my voting years, right, from in my 20s and 30s, that it was really beautiful when you believed a politician was a reach across the aisle kind of person. That was a positive. That was such a positive that he's going to reach across the aisle. He's going to gather the folks together. He's going to he or she, right? They are, right? Yes, the politician is going to be someone that gathers folks around an idea, and then takes all of it together to make something that's good for America, not half of the Americans, right? And so, and it's all of the Americans, right? That whether we have different worldviews or not. And so I think that sometimes we hear that somebody from this party is reaching out to talk to somebody from this party, and we're like, oh my gosh, they're kowtowing. Oh my gosh, they're bowing down. Oh my gosh, they're doing what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to consider everybody's point of view.
Right. No one's right. Neither side's right all the time. It's so closed-minded, ridiculous to say that, right?
It's true. And so I think that I think that if we just stop, I remember you and I don't know if you went with me, you sent me, I think, to the Major City Chiefs meeting one year in Washington, D.C. And it was interesting to me because I watched Republicans and Democrats, and some of the Democrats back then were, we would consider, extremer Democrats on their side. And I listened to them, and whether they were Republican or a Democrat, when they were talking about the issues to the same collective room of 50 of the top chiefs of the country of police, it was just, everything was, man, these are complex issues. Yeah. And I'm working with so-and-so from this party and so-and-so from this party, and we're working together. And these are complex issues. And it was so beautiful to me because I was in my 40s, and here I am hearing for the first time politicians going, this isn't a soundbite. You know what I mean? Like when they get together, they're really close and they're differing on details, but when they get in front of the news camera, the details they're differing on are what the whole thing is. And it's not the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is that these are important things to all of us. And I think that I love what you're saying about we need to spend time to understand both sides of any issue because we can learn and grow. But the risk of that is you have to put your beliefs on the table and put them sort of at risk. You have to go, I'm going to put these at risk a little bit so you can understand someone.
It's like sports, you know what I mean? Like I'm a huge football fan, and it's like, I know you love the Dolphins. I love the Ravens. When I see someone, a Steelers fan, it's all right. It's all right. It's like lightly, but it's alienating. I'm like, oh, not good. You chose the wrong team. And that is, if you keep it all in perspective, it's not a deal breaker. You don't be like, well, I'm not talking to them. I can be, though, if you're in the wrong stadium at the wrong time. I went to Ravens the first time they went back to Cleveland. That was a very aggressive time. But, what people do in the politics world is really they get on their team and they literally believe the other team is the devil, the enemy, Satan, and that their team's always right. And it's not true in anything. I don't know why. It's not true in anything. No one's always right. There's no party that's always right. But the media and the politicians and social media has pitted good people against each other. Listen, I traveled, first time in 2.5 years. And when you're traveling, there are people that have bought into it. You can see the people that are alienating. They're very aggressive. They have the T-shirt on, or just their aura is very alienating. Everyone can feel it. But 90% of the people, you just watch them interact. People are not, wherever their skin color is, how they're dressed. Most people are pleasant. They're getting along, talking. What do you need? I got to get on the plane. Came with my luggage. Trying to get out. How's your kid? Are you feeling okay? Let me pass you whatever, something. It's that we're not at each other's throat. But you turn on the TV from 7 to 11 at night, boy. I mean, they will just have you believing we're in two different countries. So, but just encourage everybody to dig in and find ways. Again, the key is approaching the conversation with, I want to learn. You're not trying to always convince. And that's everybody, 90% of people jump in the conversation. I'm going to convince Billy or Susan to see it my way. In the business world, it's all out there. And then, the third one in that triumvirate of super important topics is, religion you hear about, or I think I'd rather preface it as faith. Josh Braun actually this morning did a post about, he had an evangelist come to his house, and he mentions in his post, I'm not saying anything, that he's Jewish and he's not really into his faith. But from the two folks that showed up to his door, he literally did then the sales close, the sales stats. He's like, well, how many homes do you knock on? How many times do you get to pitch your idea? How many then kind of take you up on what, this thing? And so he got all their stats. And so then I literally early this morning, I said, hey, I happen to know Josh. He's worked for our company a little bit, done some work. And I was like, hey, forget the business part of it. Your little answer of my faith's not important to me, or he's not exploring. I go, I would encourage you, there's nothing more important than that piece. I would encourage you to spend time on that. And so, he shot me a little note back. And so I believe that wholeheartedly. This thing of like, let's not talk about faith or religion or what have you, or what's your opinion, could not disagree with that even more, right?
I think we need to be thoughtful. It is like, where did our world begin is a pretty insignificant part of our worldview, and how all that happens. We need to think through these things. These aren't things that are passive issues. These are the questions of life. Why am I here? Where did I come from? Am I important? Am I significant? What's my role? These are the questions we wake up asking every other morning, if not more often than that. And so in that context, we should be thoughtful. Don't let other people think for you. I want you to form your worldview from an informed position, and dig, right? Dig. Like, sometimes you have to go to the second page of Google now to dig, because the first page of Google is all ads that are based upon your Amazon shopping habits from 3 weeks ago. It's like, I need to get past that to start becoming informed, but reading. How did you get to that decision? How did you get to that point? What was the basis of that? Do it like you had to do it for your 8th grade term paper. Like, do it now for the important part of your life.
But that's the key. Look, people will, of these three, the business thing, you have to decide how much time and energy you want to put into it. A lot of people spend a lot of money, a lot of time thinking about how do I make money, then they don't figure out how to invest it or how to handle it properly. So that doesn't seem smart. The world of politics, you have to figure out what works for you, especially locally. The national stuff rarely will affect you locally, so figuring that out. But in the faith world, what's sad is that typically in the most important moments in someone's life, that's sometimes when they're trying to figure out their faith or their belief system. And that can be really challenging, because it's not if it's coming to your doorstep, it's coming. Like, we all know, like our pastor used to say, the stats are amazing. 100 out of 100 people are going to die. So it's coming, whether that's your parents, God forbid, your child, your spouse, loved ones. At a minimum, that's going to happen. And other life drama. We just went through COVID. It's going to happen. And if you're unsure or not of faith, those moments can be very, very challenging as you're trying to work out, what does this really mean, or what is my faith, or what have you, while you're going through a life-altering moment. Can be super challenging. And we just don't want you to go through both those simultaneously. The first one's already hard enough, right? And if you're unsure about your faith, where that stands, they could be almost debilitating, where you can't get off the mat.
King Solomon was one of the kings of Israel about 3,000 years ago. And they said of him back then, he was the richest, wisest man ever. And he wrote a book called Ecclesiastes. And in that book, he says, don't hang out at parties, hang out at funerals. And you're like, what? He said, because that's where people talk about the important stuff. And interestingly, he's telling us, like, listen, when you're at a funeral, somehow it just gets boiled down. Our worldview goes, and we've got 2 or 3 questions that are just banging in our head. Yeah. And if we haven't answered those questions for ourselves, we feel this compelling, or this push from inside we should think about this a little bit more. We should, and it was very interesting that I remember going to a funeral, and I watched somebody, a part of my family I love very much, and they were standing over the edge of my grandmother's grave, and they just they hadn't answered that question. They thought they did, but you could tell by the way they were standing over the hole going, we don't get, we don't, they didn't know what to do now. They were like,
yeah,
he's not breathing anymore. What's that? And they thought they had it so boxed up. You know, they're the ones that would tell you at the party, here's how I believe, here's what I think, and it sort of unraveled over the hole. And I think that's so important that we do consider going and sometimes it's going and just going alone someplace and just thinking about these important things. And because I don't want to be morbid and say go to funerals, but listen, there are some funerals that have had the most impact in my life because I watched the evidence of someone that lived well. But the ones that really have changed me inside are the ones that I watch people finish well.
Listen, I want to have you share the two dog story in a second, but I just want to say as a quick sidebar is if you followed the news this week, you saw we got the telescopes way on the edge of our solar system and took these crazy pictures of the amazing galaxy, and it's just so interesting. I know as a young person, I'm sure a lot of people do it today. You hear there's these two visions of the world, at least these two, right? Evolution and then creation, and it's very interesting. The scientists, let's just say that, have to add billions of years to make up for it, right? They take that picture and they go, it's 30 billion, and you're like, how could that be? How do we know it's 30 billion? But they have to add billions to account for all the changes that need to take place. And I would just say as a quick sidebar, without getting into that, whatever your belief system is, I just want to say factually, there's not enough time, there's not enough evolution for a fish to jump out of water and live, for something on the land to jump into the water to live, for something to take off and fly. You don't evolve into that. So whatever, just chew on those for a little bit. Like you don't jump out of a tree and go, yesterday that one died, today we're going to evolve into flying. It just doesn't work that way. So even when you study those theories, they have holes. But I would just say, in full disclosure, all the theories have holes. You talk about faith, all of them do, right? And just like politics, people have a tendency to get their jersey on and go, well, this is my belief. And then they find the holes in everyone else's system, but they don't look at their own. And I'll just say, whatever you believe, it has holes. And ultimately it comes down to faith, because all the belief systems, you believe in evolution. Well, Darwin, there's a lot of holes in that process, right? And if you're someone of faith, as a man of a Christian faith, there are some things that are mysteries of the world. You're like, that takes faith. But the thought of you have the first things evolving into those major in and out of water or flying, that just doesn't, and they're like 30 billion. So I just want to say that from your faith system, like, again, maybe take off your jersey for a little while, ask some questions so you're open to hear other things, not to necessarily move you, but just for you to get more well-rounded and hear what other people's perspective are makes you a better person, right? It just, learning and hearing makes you a better person, right?
Jack, I think it's so cool to think about the concept you're talking about. Let's talk about Darwin for 1 second. Darwin was a guy that was born and given a worldview by his parents, and it was somewhat religious based and it was somewhat science based, and his grandfather had a theory, and his grandfather, he probably sat on his grandfather's lap or sat in his grandfather's lab, and this evolution kind of concept, the species and all these different things. But here's the thing about Darwin. He did not die a die-hard evolutionist. He lived his whole life discovering and trying to put together the evidence of his discoveries. And if you read what Darwin wrote, he says, here's some conclusions I've drawn, and here's some things I haven't been able to connect the dots on. And I love that, because he doesn't he's he doesn't
talk
and developing a worldview, but he's not drawing these hardline divisive conclusions. He's like, listen, there's some things here that require some more research and discovery. I can't put all the dots together. And here's the interesting thing. Some people have just taken excerpts from him and put no dots, no extra research, and just said, that's it. And it's just missing. He would be I really believe, after reading some of his writings, he would be disappointed at how conclusive his findings are now viewed when he didn't view them that way himself.
Well, yeah, I think we're all people. As you study human psychology, we want a solid foundation. We're not great with uncertainty. If you've ever had a health diagnosis, or if you've had a preliminary health diagnosis and you got to wait for the results, we're not good during that time. And so we sometimes jump ahead, and because we want finite yes or no, we want black or white. Many of us are not great in the gray world when it comes to like things that impact our life greatly. Like, am I going to heaven? Not going to heaven. Is there a God? Is there not a God? You know, how do I make money? Or not make money? Do I like the Republicans? Do I hate the Republicans? Do I like the Democrats? You know, so we try to make it black and white, and the reality is none of it's black and white. And
Right.
so, but listen, in that vein, I just wanted to cue you up. I love, you know, again, I mentioned I spent a lot of time with Mike and heard him speak numerous times. And one of the things we talk about the 180 way, like, what does that look like and how do you do it differently? There's this story that Mike tells about the two dogs, the dog and the spirit dog. And so I just wanted you to share that, Mike, because I think it's such a great way for people to think about their faith and how it works in their life.
Well, a long time ago in the frontier of Alaska, right? One of the guys that grew up in Alaska, that he raised dogs, and he raised dogs during the day. They would pull sleds, but at night they would fight each other, and the men would bet on it. And not condoning that in any way, but that's what they did. But the same old man would bring in the dogs for the fight every week, and he'd bring in different dogs, but no matter what dogs he brought in, he would always know which dog was going to win the fight. He'd always bet on the right dog. He would always win. And so somebody finally asked him, "How do you always know, old man, which dog is going to win?" And he says, "Well, that's easy, man. I know which dog I've been feeding all week." And so the dog that gets fed is the dog that's going to win the fight. And that means so much to me. And the way Billy Graham used that story to talk about the two dogs that are within us. These two dogs are fighting, and they're called the flesh dog and the spirit dog, right? Yeah. That there's two parts to us. Freud called it id and superego, right? That there's id and superego, or flesh dog, spirit dog. Id would be your flesh dog. Superego would be your spirit dog. And there's been in movies and comic books and cartoons, this dilemma that's inside us has been perpetuated or illustrated through Two-Face and the Batman series. There's another one, Jekyll and Hyde, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that there's two. Now, these are always induced by something, but we resonate with these concepts because there's something inside us. Venom is really Venom is like, no, we can't, but oh, this feels good. Like, oh, the battle is just so intense. And so it's a reflection of the battle that we all have inside us. And the way we operate, though, is that I have a friend the other day that said, Mike, my former self, or I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. I want to talk to you about that a little bit, because it's been my experience that I don't have a former self. I have a spirit dog and a flesh dog, and that spirit dog didn't have much say in my life when I was younger. The flesh dog was driving everything. And so it's easy for me to say, oh, my former self, the one that was driven by but the flesh dog is still there within me. And that flesh dog is doing the things that are selfish, doing the things that are self-aggrandizing, proud, and getting out and look at me and look at all I've done. Whereas the spirit dog talks about humility. The spirit dog talks about patience, sacrifice. I was born to help others, not born to help myself. That's really kind of the centric part of flesh dog, spirit dog. Flesh dog says, me, 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 me. Spirit dog saying, you were born for more, but it's to help more people, right? To live better lives, more complete lives. No matter what your role is, you were put on this earth almost sacrificially, that you can give your life for others. And you don't have to die for that. You will eventually die, but you can live for that, and so, and the spirit dog also lives under two commands. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. But what's really interesting is, if I'm going to be a spirit dog, I'm going to let the spirit dog lead my life or guide my life or be the influence in my life. What can I do? Well, it's love and love, love and love, love and love. And so it gets mixed up as we filter that through other people's worldviews. I would say some of the verbs that have been wrapped up with spirituality are judge and judge, not love and love. Put down and put down. A word that I struggle with is fix, right? Fixing isn't loving. Fixing is like, I don't want to fix. I sort of feel like I want to fix you, but that's not what it's. Love and love. Yeah. And love comes with acceptance, which is really what we're talking about here. Is I accept you already. I accept you already. Before you talk, I accept you. Before you tell me that some of the components of your worldview wildly differ from some components of my worldview, I already accept you. I accept you, and I want to know more about you. And by the way, so we have better conversations in the future, let's find some stuff we agree on. And it's amazing when people do that, that I don't want my faith. I don't want to thrust my faith upon you. And I don't even want to scare you into my faith. I don't even want to tell you about hell and scare you into my faith. I want to love you so much that it's compelling. I want my life to be so full of love. I want it to reflect love for God. I do want that. But I also want it to reflect my love for you, regardless of your belief system. I want you to feel loved and accepted by me. And I want that to be compelling.
Yeah, I think across all of them, as you start that analogy, in the business world, you hear like the grass is always greener. And then folks that have been down the road know the grass is green. The grass is always greener over there on the other side, right? But, when you're around, especially as you get older and you talk, you're like, the grass is green where you water it, right? It's where we spend time. And in your analogy of, the dogs, it's like the guy knew, hey, wherever I spend time and energy and love and caring, that side mysteriously flourishes, right? And I think that's really so much that runs through all of them. If we could step back and with a more empathetic heart, desire to hear and learn and not be right, things change so quickly because we're all looking for a safe place. We're all looking for a place. Hey, can I be myself, say my stuff, and not get rained down on? And that's not the society we've created as of now, coming out of the riots and the pandemic, and it's just been a lot. And so to me, I love this topic. It's one of the core values of the 180 way of like, hey, when you hear, don't talk about money and religion and politics, it's really opposite. It literally is. You have to dig in on those three topics because again, besides those three, the only other thing that probably affects you as much is health of you and the one you love. But those are the three biggest topics that are going to impact your life at a foundational way when you look back to self-assess, or you look back and want to leave a legacy that is in some way, generational or impactful to your kids or your grandkids. If you don't dig in on those topics, it's going to be pretty empty.
Right? Jack, you mentioned looking back. I think we can all relate to a Friday night after midnight. So we're looking sometime on Saturday morning, whether it's just before we ended or just when we woke up. And so, but I think we've all looked back from sometime after midnight on a Friday and said, how did I get here?
Yeah.
How did I get here? And I think it's so important to reflect that, look back over the week, and I can tell you how you got there because I know that we'll be able to figure out what dog you were feeding.
Yeah.
Because it's the dog that won, right? Were you feeding your flesh? If you're sitting there at the end of the week going, how did I get here? You fed your flesh dog all week. And that's the dog that won the fight. And so I think there's a time in our lives when we don't have that fight anymore, right? But if you're still in that fight, it's not that hard to figure out how you got there.
I don't know which one of those dogs is the right dog, by the way. But yeah, I would say this. I say this all the time to people that are around me. I love sports. I'm a high school football coach. And I would just say this. We've all seen, particularly in the athletic world, a lot of athletes fall for whatever reason. And I'll just say in that world, no one gets dressed at 7 p.m. on Friday thinking, tonight I'm going to jail. That's not how it works. That's not what happens. Everybody gets dressed at 7 o'clock. Like, this is good. Like, look at me. You know what I mean? Like Ben Roethlisberger, Ray Lewis, et al. Pickett. No one goes, tonight I'm going to get arrested. That's not how it works. It is literally 20, 50 small decisions that get you into a spot. And then you're like, how did I get here? right? And it's one of the reasons you got there is because you decided, I'm not going to talk about faith with anybody. I'm not going to talk about money or how to be successful with anybody. Oh, I'm not going to talk about politics. I'm not going to get involved in this thing. I'm just going to let it all just happen, whatever happens. Like, you get there, those are big ones. And then you get some small ones in your personal life. And then all of a sudden, somebody who went through a DUI, that's so vivid in my mind. I remember getting arrested. I remember having handcuffs put on me. And I remember sitting in, a jail facility in Southern Maryland. And you're like, not how I thought the evening would start. And so just encourage all of us, because we're all have things, right? If somebody comes out of the recovery world, everybody has things. You can walk around and people have masks. Everybody has stuff. So you can rest assured, whatever your stuff is, somebody's got stuff. They just might have a better mask, but when they go home, they got to take their mask off and they can look in the mirror and be themselves. And so when you talk about these topics, cannot encourage you enough to dig in the right environment with an empathetic heart to learn and get better and seek first to understand and maybe never be understood. Maybe you just end the conversation. You're like, I'm just going to keep my stuff to myself, right? You don't always have to, let me get my stuff in the end. But if you're able to do that, I think we create a much better world and you will create a much better life. I share that really, really, really humbly. So,
I think that's beautiful, Jack. And I think that's what we need. We need to understand other people. And I love that I had a meeting with a rabbi once, and I was really disappointed in something the rabbi had said. And so I was really disappointed. I had a friend of a friend make the meeting, and I went to the meeting, and we had a great meeting. I learned so much from him that day that somewhere in my heart, while he was talking, I said, I'm just going to learn from him today. I'm going to walk out a better human being for I met him today. And then later, my friend called me back, and he goes, what did you say to him? I go, why? He goes, he put off meeting with you. He did not want to meet with you. And he said during the whole meeting, he kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. And he goes, but it never did. And I thought, wow, that's so cool that we have different belief systems. But we sat there and I learned from him. I quote him. There are one-liners I quote from him all the time. It was so beautiful. And it was just a matter of, I realized that I can win an argument or try to have an argument to win here, or I can just say, I met another really cool human being. What can I learn from him today?
Yeah. Well, listen, the analogy I would give folks, and we're getting short on time, is listen, as an analogy, when you are, pick an age, 45, and you're having a conversation with an elementary school kid, you're not trying to be right. You're like secure in your beliefs. You're not trying to convince the elementary school kid, I'm right. You know what I mean? You just accept them for where they are, and when they say crazy things, about Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or life, or it doesn't matter. You know why? Because you're secure in your belief. It's only when we get insecure, if we're really honest, again, in human psychology, is when we feel like we got to go all in. We're like, well, this is too close to home. Better get my viewpoint out there. And it's just not, if you have the security and the foundational, just fortitude within yourself to know, hey, whatever this person says, I can take it. I don't have to strike back. That's when you're really getting into self-actualization. You don't have to always get your point out there. And so I just think that part is so important, as again, if you can approach these topics, seek first understand, then be understood. Amen. Hey, just before we wrap, I just want to I want to give our end of show full shout out to the folks over at IDOT Help. Go get your IDOT account. There's all these services. IDOT Help's amazing. $5 a month. Go get your IDOT Help account. Mike, any last words?
I think we said it. Just Jack, I really want to hear from you.
Well, listen, I love if you're just following the show, we started this new journey, really talking about how do you develop personally. Really, the 180 way is about doing things really 180 degrees opposite of what you hear every day. Firm believer in that. That's where all the big things are. Being a part of the crowd, doing what everyone else is doing is not where it's found, but we're wired that way from young. None of us wants to sit alone at the cafeteria in middle school or high school. So we're wired to be like, I need to be part of the group. I need to be part of the group. I better conform. I want to be part of the clique. I want to join the gang. I want to be part of the football team. Whatever that is, your thing is. And really, as we get into adulthood, it works against us so bad. And no wonder, all the stats of, in America, the richest country in the world, where people are unhappy, midlife crisis, feel like they're in a bad marriage, have $1,000 in savings account, spend 33 hours watch TV. All those things happen because people are not happy. And so really our endeavor, our initiative is to really help move people to think about their world differently. Really, that's what the 180 way is we want to do life intervention for people to help them get to a better place. So that's really where our heart is. Amen? So we are out of here. We will be back next Wednesday at noon.
Killing in the name of